Okay, so I'm going to take you through a little bit about enlargements today. I'm making a guest appearance on Mr. Greaves's site, so hopefully this will go alright. If not, you won't ever hear from me again. So to start with, we're going to look at quite a simple enlargement, a scale factor 3 here, and a center 0, 0. Well, hopefully the center 0, 0 is pretty basic. Now, a scale factor 3 enlargement just means we're going to enlarge this shape here by every side by the scale of 3. So if this side is 2, this side will now become 6 squares high, this is 1 square, it'll become 3 squares across, and so on. So the first thing I'm going to do is on my shape, I'm going to actually just draw, starting from there, an enlargement of scale factor 3. So, as I said, that was 2 squares. I've now done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was 1, so that's going to now be 3. And this one I don't need to worry about too much, because obviously if the other two are right, that must be joining them. And that there is a scale factor of 3. The only problem is I haven't taken into account this at all. So I haven't thought at all about the centre. I've still got a mark in an exam, but obviously, hopefully I want to get the 2. And I'm going to use some tracing paper. There's lots of ways to do this, but I'm going to use some tracing paper here to try to get my correct position for this shape. Now, I know that this is my centre. Now, to get from my centre, to get from my centre to here, I've gone 3 squares to the right and 1 square up. So 3 squares across and 1 square up. Scale factor 3 just means I'm going to times that by 3. So I'm going 3 across and 1 up. I'm going to go 9 across and 3 up. So this point has now become this point here. So this point in my original shape is now here. And I'm going to just draw this triangle starting over here. Now this is where my tracing paper comes in, because rather than starting from here and worrying too much, I've actually just drawn around my shape already. So placing that tracing paper, this is my point here, so placing this point here, I am now just going to go around this and my shape is done. Now I'm just going to press relatively hard so I'm getting an indentation onto my sheet, enough there for me to can see exactly what I've got. So I'm just going to go over it like that, and like that. And that's that done. Now it's always good to have a little check in an exam to make sure I'm on the right track, and this is a really good one for enlargements. I can draw some grid lines. Now some people use these to actually draw the shapes in the first place, but I prefer to think of them as a bit of a check. I'm just going to draw a couple of them on here to give you the idea of what they are, and I'll explain them. So starting from my centre, you'll see this line passes through both this original shape and my final shape. And this is called a ray line. It's going from the centre through the shape to my final shape. And exactly the same here, look. The same points are matched the same line. And it's a really good check. Every point on my original shape will follow one of these lines. Oh, I haven't done this corner, so I can show you that this corner to this corner is going to follow exactly the same process. And here it goes. Okay, so I'm now very confident in my exam. I'm moving on, I'm getting those 2 marks, and I'm very confident of it because all my ray lines are showing that. It doesn't matter if I draw them on an exam. In fact, some people would like to see you're working, but this shape here is my enlargement. Okay, so that's the first one. I'm now going to look at an enlargement of scale factor of a half. Now you might think enlargement scale factor half, what's that about? Well, it's actually going to make the shape smaller, which I get a lot of people telling me, well, that's not enlarging, but if you make something half the size, it still can be enlarging. I've got the centre minus 7, 0, which is going to be just there. So that's my centre point. I'm going to start by, as I did up on my original one, I'm going to start by drawing my new shape. Now, scale factor of half, as I said, means everything is half the size. So if I start here, rather than this side being 2 squares up, I'm just halving that, so it's only going to be 1 up. This is 4 squares across, so hopefully you're guessing this is going to be 2 squares across. Sorry, I've not drawn that at all well, but I'm just trying to stop there. 4 squares up, so hopefully you're thinking 2 squares up. And this side, like I said before, this side that's a little bit more difficult to work out, well, that's just going to be joining the rest. So this shape here is my scale factor half enlargement. And as I said, it has made it smaller. Now again, I'm going to just quickly trace around that. I'm going to use that bit later, put that to one side. So, to get from my center to here, what have I done? I've got 8 squares along, 8 squares to the right, and 2 squares up. Okay, so scale factor of half just means I'm going to be halving that. So rather than 8 squares, I'm going to go 4. Rather than 2 up, I'm going to just go 1 up. So 4 squares to the right, 1 square up, just there. So that there is this point here. So these 2 points are the same. This is the point on my original, this is my point on my ending shape. So let's just take my tracing paper, which as you know I've already just done. I'm going to just go over this nice and quickly, and that there is where I've got. I can see that really clearly. You probably can't, but when you do it you will be able to. And that there is my, again, I'm not going to go through every point here, but I'll just show you a couple of the rays that I could draw on. So you can see here a ray going from my center through each of the equivalent points on my 2 shapes, and that is a good little check. So moving on from there. Okay, we're making it a bit trickier again, because here we've got half again, which we've just done obviously, but we've also minus a half. Now you might think, what does that mean? It's actually going to end up the shape the other side of my center. So my center is 2, 0, just here. So we're not going to end up above the center of enlargement, as this end up down here, so it's going to end up the other side of our center of enlargement. Let's start by doing what I've done every time, of drawing on my enlargement of scale factor of a half. Don't worry about the minus half for a minute. Scale factor of a half. So this is 2 squares, so I'm just going to make it 1 square. This is 4 squares in total across, so I only need 2 squares in total across, so it's actually going to get to there. Hopefully you can see this has worked. So if that's that bit in there, that is my scale factor of a half, because rather than being 2 squares up, it's only 1 square. This whole thing is 4 squares across, I've got 2 squares across, so there's my scale factor of a half. So I'm just going to take my tracing paper again and quickly draw around it. Now this one is the one that's towards the back end of a higher tier exam paper. This is the one where it gets a bit trickier. So my scale factor of a half, I'm going to do exactly the same as I did to start with, where this is my point. I'm starting from here. I'm going to go up 2 squares. Rather than halving that just to up 1 square, I'm going to go 1 square, but so that's going to be there. So that point is now here. Rather than 2 squares that way, I've gone 1 square the other. For my half has gone, I've gone 1 to 2, and my minus means I've gone the opposite direction. Hopefully that was a relatively coherent explanation. I'm not sure it's that great in my head. Now, the thing is here, is we need to end with our shape a little bit like a rotation. I'm going to turn it around. I'm not rotating, but it's a little bit like it, so I've ended up turning, and my shape ends up turning around. So I've ended up here with my shape there. You might prefer to think about flipping your tracing paper, but it ends up just here. So again, I'm going to go over that, and I'll just quickly put the rays in and everything. So here's my shape, and if I draw the rays in, they work really well again. So I'm joining the equivalent points. So this is the pointy bit of the triangle, and the equivalent point triangle here going through my center. This one obviously is going to work because it's just straight down. If I pick this point, by the way, as my starting point, I usually try and pick something quite point. I would have I've gone 4 squares right and up 3. So rather than 4 squares right, to get to here I've got squares left, so I've halved it and gone the other way. Rather than 3 squares up, I've gone 1.5 squares down, so I've halved it and gone the opposite direction. So scale factor minus half, a little go through, but that's the harder of the 3 transformations. Just to finish, and thank you for sticking with me to this point, this is the other thing we might be asked in an exam paper, which is to describe fully the single transformation. in my opinion, is easier. Certainly easier than the one we've just looked at. And this is 3 marks worth here. So I think this is 3 marks that we would be quite happy to see in an exam paper. To start with, I'd say what transformation is. Now, it won't take a genius to work out on the back of what I've just been talking about that this is an enlargement. So that's 1 mark already. We've got 1 mark in the bag there for just saying the word enlargement. Happy days, really, in an exam. Second up, we're saying the scale factor. Now, we've got to be really careful. It says map P onto Q. P to Q. So this is our starting point. This is our finishing point. So we're going from P to Q. A lot of people don't read that very clearly, and they just assume it's from the smaller one to the bigger one, but we've just seen already that it could be going the other way. So be really careful there. But here it is from P to Q. Let's just look at a few sides. Well, that's 2 squares along there, and that's 5 squares along there. Okay, that's 2 squares along there, and that's 5 squares there. So every side go from here to here, we've times it by 2.5. So I can write here scale factor 2.5. Okay, that's another mark. We've written our scale factor, so now 2 out of our 3 marks are in the bag. You probably can work out the third one is for the centre. Now, I'm going to use what I've been doing all the way through so far, my check, to find the centre. Okay, so I'm going to draw a few lines going from the equivalent points. And actually, it's been really kind to us here because it's just put the centre at the origin. Centre 0, 0. 1 more mark. And that is pretty much all you need to know for GCSE enlargements. Well done for bearing with me all that time. I would just say very quickly, if you are on the Top Gear scheme, then obviously anyone who says that they've seen this video will get an instant 5 signatures from me, because I'll be delighted with that. And hopefully you've enjoyed it enough for me to have another go sometime with, rather than just hiding in the distance and letting Mr. Greaves carry on.